the fate.
This is the way. Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Tells me when you'll remember this.
Hello, critics, non-critics, and friends. Welcome to the Film Optics Podcast, where we take a glance into blockbusters, indie films, and everything in between. I'm your host, Christian, and I am joined here today by my partner in film, Devin. And today, we're going to be giving a triple feature review of sorts. First up on the list, we're going to be reviewing our Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves review for you all. And on the back half of this episode, I will be riding solo as I give my home entertainment Blu-ray coverage of Women Talking and Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham. So we got all these crazy, amazing genres just meshing it together for one episode. And I'm very excited to dive in here. But before we begin today's episode, you can listen to our podcast on podcast platforms around the internet. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Audible, and more. And if you are a new or seasoned listener to the show, we would love to hear from you guys. Follow us on Instagram and follow us on Twitter at FilmOptics. That is optics with an X. Or you can email us at filmoptics@gmail.com for any movie-related questions. Devin, my D&D pal, are we waiting for Jonathan to join us on this grand adventure, or should we just continue without him?
You know, I've never actually taken part in a campaign myself, but I think after this movie, we might have to get one going.
Yeah. So, just a little bit of backstory. I have played. Well, I've tried to play D&D a few times. You know, you see it on TV. It looks very fun when it comes to Stranger Things. There's also Critical Role. They do a lot of campaigns out there. For me, I can never get into the game myself. Like, if I want to play something role-playing like, I will just pop in a video game and just start playing. But I do like watching other people play. And that's when it gets interesting, because I can never get into character enough. I'd probably make like a crappy actor altogether, but I can never get into character enough to actually, go through a full campaign. I have tried a few times just to be like, okay, maybe the first time I just wasn't feeling it. Maybe I'll try it out a few more times to see if this is my thing. It's definitely not, but I have the utmost respect for people who play it, because it is so much fun to watch, and just all the crazy adventures that people go on. But Devin, so you've never watched anyone play like in person, or have you tried it yourself at least once?
I mean, I've seen Stranger Things. That counts for something.
I've watched other people play it on a TV show.
Fictionally.
Yeah. I mean, it does. It looks like a lot of fun, but I think we're millennials, so it's like back then, especially in the 80s, it was fantasy was such a big genre back then, like a very big fairy tale fantasy, I should say, and it almost seemed like the market, when it came to video games and movies and TV shows, were just oversaturated with this fairy tale fantasy aspect. And Willow came out during around that time. And there's so much. It's super crazy altogether. But yeah, I feel like since we're millennials, we kind of grew up with technology. So video games were bigger for us. We played other board games, but for me at least, Dungeons and Dragons was not a part of my childhood repertoire. Or honestly, none of our friends really played it either growing up. So it's kind of we missed the mark on that altogether. But a buddy of mine here in town, he goes every Wednesday during the summer, because it's just nicer outside. I'll tag along with them, because the place that they host Dungeons and Dragons at has really good food. So I'm like, yeah. He's like, hey, you want to go to D&D? I'm like, yeah. I won't play, but I'll go for some food and watch you guys play.
Front row seat.
Yeah, that's very true. But how's your week been? Or how was your weekend? I'm sorry. We're recording this on a Monday. I'm totally forgetting what day it is altogether. But yeah, what did you do over the weekend?
Yeah, it was a pretty solid weekend. I took Jared and Randy to see this movie, actually. Had to bring some reinforcements, people that have actually played before to break things down.
Yeah.
So that was a good time. It was 11 a.m. screening, which was interesting. So they were late, of course. They missed like the first 5 minutes.
Man. You see, I stopped bringing people to screenings. Not like as like out of spite. Like sometimes I will. It really just depends. But it's like nowadays, like when it comes to screenings, I just go by myself.
The issue is that they start right at that time because there's no previews. So you just got to be there.
Well, actually, I prefer it that way. And anytime that I bring someone to a screener, I always tell them, I'm like, hey, it starts at 7, as in the movie will start at 7. There's no previews. The only preview you might get is like that, like if it's at Regal, like that super cringy, like movie line thing that they do. Gosh, it is so awful. I do not like it. Like it makes the whole Nicole Kidman, like AMC little spiel looks, I mean, it's clearly better, but I despise the Regal opening where it's just like a bunch of people walking in and like every word out of their mouth is a movie line. And I'm like, this is so cheesy. And I don't like using the word cringe all that much, but that is a very cringy advertisement and they need to stop immediately.
I will never understand movie theaters advertising the movie theater you're seeing a movie at. You already got me. You don't need to rope me in.
Yeah, and that's the thing I have about the whole Nicole Kidman thing. Like, yeah, it's perfect, it's powerful, but like you said, you know, especially if you're like an AMC, like I understand them doing the AMC stuff A-list. That's perfect because they play that right before they play the trailers. Like, oh, you can sign up for AMC A-list and watch movies just like these, and then we get 30 minutes of trailers, and then we get the Nicole Kidman AMC ad. I'm like you said, I'm already here. My butt is in your seat. Like, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. Like, people know what AMC theaters is. I mean, if you want to play that, like, you know, when I'm watching a YouTube video or something, that's fine. But I'm very tired of watching that ad. Like, it's annoying altogether. But with all that said, got a little bit off topic, but as I mentioned before, first we're going to be covering our Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves review. If you are new here to the podcast, welcome to the show. The way that we usually break down our reviews is that we get into our initial reactions, which is our non-spoiler section first. Then we head into our spoilers, and we'll let you know well before we get into spoilers. And for this time around, we're actually going to talk about a little bit about our favorite fantasy/adventure recommendations to give to our wonderful listeners out there. If you're craving more Dungeons & Dragon-like content, where you can find that and whatnot. So I have a few up my sleeve. And, Devin doesn't really watch all that much fantasy, but if he has something to the table, that's cool. If not, hey, you know, it's all good. And then we're going to get into our final thoughts and then our ratings for Dungeons & Dragons. And then we will move on to the home entertainment Blu-ray section of our review. So with all that said, we'll be right back after this introduction to Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Truth be told, we helped the wrong person steal the wrong thing. We didn't mean to unleash the greatest evil the world has ever known. But we're gonna fix it.
So how do we pull that off? Figure it out over a drink?
Probably best.
You need cooling!
To give us a fighting chance, we're gonna need strength. You got this, right?
I know you don't.
We also need courage, magic, and you. What is that again? It's an owlbear.
And we are back with our Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves review. This movie is directed by John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein and stars Chris Pine, Michelle Rodriguez, Hugh Grant, Regé-Jean Page. And the synopsis is as follows. A charming thief and a band of unlikely adventurers embark on an epic quest to retrieve a lost relic. That's pretty much it. That is the long and short of the synopsis altogether. So what we're going to do is, of course, we're going to get into our initial reactions first. So I'm going to pass it over to Devin so he can give his initial reactions to Dungeons and Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
I've never played Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm giving that perspective as somebody who was going in completely blind. Don't really know much about it except that it's a board game that you play and you have certain roles. They actually gave out these little trading cards for each of the characters at the screening. They had a mimic chest out front. It was pretty cool, the setup they had. I think we each got one of each of the characters. We got the bard, the paladin, the barbarian, the rogue, the sorcerer, the druid, the wizard. Whole gang's here. I think we're ready to create a card game of our own just based around this movie. But I think overall it was a great time. Just kind of a really fun, whimsical adventure. Definitely more so leaning towards comedy than anything, which I think worked out pretty well because it can definitely appeal to the broader audience that way. You're not getting into the weeds and just getting too deep into the lore of Dungeons and Dragons. It's very approachable, which is definitely a good way to go about it. And it's just a funny event. It kind of gives you Guardians of the Galaxy vibes at certain points, just a weird ragtag group getting together. Don't really expect it to work out, and then they just find a way. Chris Pine is basically Chris Pratt in this movie too. He's basically Star-Lord. He's the planner, the one that makes the plans. A lot of similarities there. It also kind of reminds me of I'd say a better version of the newer Jumanji movies. I like those, but I feel like this is kind of an improvement on those just as far as the humor goes, because I think it really landed in this movie. And it kind of similar adventure vibes for that as well. But yeah, it's just there's great characters, great actors. Hugh Grant's the villain, and he's just going all in. Just super cheesy villain, but it's perfect for him. He just nails it. Michelle Rodriguez is great in this one. It's interesting seeing her in other things other than Fast and Furious because it feels like it's just been so much Fast and Furious for her in her career. But she has had quite the career, and it's good to see her in this one as well because she really nailed her role. Chris Pine, obviously, charming as always. He's one of the Chris's of Hollywood. And definitely imagine he had a better time here than he did in Wonder Woman 1984, where he had... That's just such a strange role.
I mean, it sounds like Chris Pine has had a pretty good past few movies. I mean, even say what you will about Don't Worry, Darling, but he does a bang up job, and no matter what he's in, and I absolutely love it. But
he's a very solid Chris.
Yeah, no, it really, really is. As far as my initial reactions go, it was, I gotta say, I really enjoyed this. Unfortunately, I didn't have the best experience in my movie theater. Every single seat was full for the most parts, since it was a fan event thing as well. But there was just one lady to the right of me who kept talking my ear off. Not I was, you're sitting down and you're trying to get into the zone and trying to get comfortable, get into, you want to get ready for the movie you're about to go see. And she just kept talking my ear off. I was trying to get ready, get comfortable and whatnot. And just kept yammering away. And I was like, what is it this time? For the first few minutes, it's nice, small talk, whatever. But then she just kept going on and on and on. I'm like, I can't even get myself ready. I felt like I wasn't ready to see the movie. And then there was this lady in front of me who was on her phone for the first 15 minutes, and it kept distracting me. And, obviously, if you've been in a theater, you can clearly see someone's on their phone. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I had to ask her twice to put her phone away. And she, gave me these little snarky looks. And I was like, listen, if you're going to sit there and, be on your phone while watching a movie, like you might as well just wait for this to hit streaming or like buy it on Blu-ray or whatever. Because you paid money to watch this. So I don't know, who you're texting, whatever. But like it is distracting. But didn't mean to get too off course there. But overall, outside of that, I really did enjoy this movie. It played just like a D&D campaign. It's just a fun adventure that these characters go on, and usually when it comes to D&D campaigns, at least from what I've noticed, there always seems to be some type of obstacle where it requires teamwork to overcome that obstacle, whether it be like a troll, some type of like actual threat that wants to hurt you, or there's some type of riddle that needs to be solved.
Or a very thick dragon.
Thick boy dragon, pudgy dragon altogether. But there always seems to be some type of obstacle, whether it's, some type of riddle or whatnot. And it is a team effort. You cannot play Dungeons and Dragons alone. And that is what I love about this movie, is that, especially the third act, it definitely felt more so like a D&D campaign playing out. And I know there are other Dungeons and Dragons movies out there. I was watching the Caravan of Garbage for Mr. Sunday Movies, like the 2000s Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, this looks horrid altogether. And I think we're finally at a point, like obviously fantasy is my favorite genre, but I feel like we're at a point with fantasy where we know how it works and what works, what doesn't work. And, a lot of people were kind of iffy about this movie altogether when it came out. But like when I saw the trailer for the first time, I'm like, oh, this just looks like so much fun. Like, and that's exactly what I got. It was funny. Like Devin said, the cast is fantastic. Hugh Grant is hilarious. Regé-Jean Page was very noble. Haven't really seen him since the first season of Bridgerton.
He was pretty Draxian in this one. Very literal person.
Yeah. Very tried and true. The hero that always walks in the straight and narrow, literally. But I really enjoyed everyone in this cast was just bringing their A game, just having fun in the role that they agreed to when, signing their contracts. It was like Devin said, it was really nice to see Michelle Rodriguez just in something else other than Fast and Furious, because I feel like that's the only thing we ever see her in. We see Hugh Grant in a lot of things. He kind of just has always had fun with his roles. Justice Smith, he's been kind of all over the place.
You tell me up and up.
Yeah, he really is. I mean, I think he was in the Pokemon movie. He was in Bumblebee, was he not? I believe he was. He was the friend of Haley Steinfeld's character. I think he was.
I'm not saying Bumblebee, but I am saying obviously Pokemon, and then he was in Jurassic World Dominion.
Yeah. Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else then. Okay. But yeah, he was also in that HBO Max show that got canceled. I think it was called like Generations or something like that. But yeah, he's been in a lot of stuff recently. So like definitely good for him. For Sophia Lillis character, there were times where I felt like she was kind of just there along for the ride. But when she was on screen, just like doing her thing, I think she did a fantastic job.
I thought the druid, like all the druid chase scenes were really cool. Just how like she can shapeshift between different animals and showing how that works out on screen.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome altogether. But I really did enjoy her character. I mean, she was in It, of course, and I was like, I knew I've seen her somewhere. Yeah, she was in It and It Chapter 2. And she was in I'm Not Okay With This. That's where I saw her from. And then she was also in Gretel and Hansel, but I haven't seen that one. But and she's in Sharp Objects. Nice. So yeah, she's definitely been in a lot of stuff as well. Very young actress. Just trying to make a name for herself, just like everybody else. And I think this seems like she had a fun role with this as well as everybody else. Just from all the interviews I've seen, like the cast really just seemed so happy to kind of just, make this film. And that's when I really care about it, because making movies is so hard. And, knowing that the cast and the crew just had a great time, creating this project for people to watch. It's really nice to see. But Devin, was there anything else you wanted to mention in our non-spoiler section before we hit our spoilers?
Yeah, I'm not going to spoil the little secret cameo, but for some reason, as that scene was coming up, I knew there was going to be a cameo. I didn't know who, but you just sense it. Like, when you get to a certain part in a movie and you know a character's being introduced, you're like, who's going to play this character? And it did not disappoint.
Yeah. And I'll also, before we get into spoilers, really quick, for the daughter of Chris Pine, Chloe Coleman, she's been in a lot of things as of late. But since Devin did not see 65, she was in that movie too. So it's been a big year for her altogether. So I was very excited to see her again. And she was also in Avatar: The Way of Water. Did not know that. Wow. She is definitely making a name for herself.
Interesting.
Yeah, pretty interesting. So, yeah, I just want to throw that out there. If you haven't seen 65, that was also another movie that came out this year with Adam Driver, and she plays a pretty prominent, she plays somebody else's daughter in that movie as well. So, yeah. But yeah, let's get into our spoiler section. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is your first spoiler warning for Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves again. That is your second spoiler warning for Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Among Thieves. So, Devin, let's talk about some spoilers. Let's talk about that sweet, sweet cameo. We get some, what I did not expect this to happen at all. I didn't know we were going to get some type of like...
Tell me something, girl.
We get some Mr. Bradley Cooper, who plays, I guess is he a human or is he like a halfling, or... Because he was significantly smaller than everybody else.
I guess the term in that world would be halfling.
What is he underneath in IMDb? Oh my God. Is he even listed? I don't know. I'm not seeing it. Wait. Because wow. That was a great little cameo. We haven't seen him really since A Star Is Born. I mean, we will this year with Guardians 3. But yeah, Bradley Cooper makes a nice little appearance as Michelle Rodriguez's character, Holga, her ex-husband. So yeah, I think that was honestly probably like the biggest surprise that we've gotten. The rest, when it comes to spoilers, it's really just story driven. But I guess talking about spoilers, what did you think of the villain? Did it work for you, Devin?
Oh, yeah, I think Hugh Grant definitely worked as the overall, like, I guess kind of the main villain for our group of characters. But then there was also Sophia, the wizard. I think they kept calling her the Red Wizard. I think that was the term for it. She was just kind of a generic type villain that's just needed to show off like certain powers. But I think overall it worked. Right. I think I really liked the final battle they had. It reminded me of Infinity War with Thanos when they took him on, and it's just a way to show off a bunch of different powers at once, and they did a good job of that.
Yeah, I think so. For the Red Wizard, I believe the actress's name is Daisy Head. I think she did a really good job, especially for Dungeons and Dragons. Like, obviously, you want to take it seriously, but like with this movie, you can't take things too seriously altogether. But also, I want to let you know, Devin, she was also in The Sandman. Not sure if you recognize her from that, but she was also in The Sandman, Daisy Head. I was like, I've seen her somewhere. And she's in Shadow and Bone. Oh my gosh.
I did not recognize her because she was very bald in this.
Yes, very, as bald as one can ever be. But yeah, I think she did a great job as I guess you can say the accomplice. That's it. Yes. she was a great accomplice to Hugh Grant's character, just kind of having the overall, she was the one trying to control Hugh Grant's character. Hugh's character thought that he had everything under control, a very greedy man. But yeah, it seems that we've also gotten like a lot of films about, or just stories about fatherhood altogether when it comes to this. So, we got 65. Again, if you haven't seen that movie, definitely watch it. And then The Last of Us, obviously earlier this year. We have this, another father-daughter relationship. I feel like those are becoming more popular as the months go on altogether. But yeah, it was a very interesting tale, so to speak. But yeah, I really did enjoy this altogether, but I'll pass it back over to Devin. Did you have anything you wanted to mention that we have not had a chance to talk about yet?
I also love the whole gag with the bringing the spell that brings people back to life, and you can ask them 5 questions, but then they just go back to being dead, but only after you ask them 5 questions. The first one was great because they asked like 4 accidental questions, and then that last one that hangs around towards the mid-credits scene where he's just waiting, needs that last question asked.
Oh, that's true. Awesome. Really quick, Devin, we have some breaking news. For this week on Hot Ones, we have Florence Pugh versus the Wings of Death at 11 a.m. Eastern this Thursday. I'm very excited to see that because I saw 2 movies this weekend. The first movie that I saw was A Good Person, starring Florence Pugh. And then on Sunday, I went to go see Dungeons and Dragons. So I saw 2 really good movies this weekend. And you should definitely check out A Good Person if you haven't already. But yeah, back to Dungeons and Dragons really quick. I do agree. I had a feeling when they didn't ask the corpse the last question, I'm like, he's going to be a post-credit scene. And that's exactly what happens.
Yeah, that was pretty easy one to spot out.
Yeah, for sure. Which, I mean, for this, it's the opening of this movie was just so funny, and it just set the tone for the rest of the film moving forward. It didn't feel long at all. It felt exactly what it needed to be. I laughed, I cried, and like you said, it's kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy, but the fantasy version altogether.
I also just wanted to shout out some of the more technical things, like the CGI looked like great throughout most of the movie, which was pretty prevalent. And you can noticeable in the trailer, but also like the writing was pretty on point. And then even the editing is not something you usually notice, but I thought the editing for this was really good because there's a lot of different locations and settings they go to, and to be able to transition between those, I thought they did that pretty well.
Yeah, and they don't stay in one location for very long. And, with it being a movie, I think that's very important where you have a limited amount of time, around maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes, where I feel like we got to see a lot of their world within a short time frame where they didn't linger in one place for too long. And that's something else that I really appreciated about this movie. But with all that said and out of the way for a spoiler section, really quick, I'm gonna put Devin on the spot. So for anyone out there, like we said, if you went to go see this movie and you're itching more for like that fantasy goodness in your life, Devin, what is one like fantasy / adventure show or film that you would recommend people to watch? And you can't say House of the Dragon.
Well, as we both know, I'm not much of a fantasy guy, so I will not be making a recommendation, but I will be pivoting. I'm making a pivot right now. So I wanted to shout out the writer / director duo of this movie because they have a pretty solid catalog of movies under their belt leading up to this. John Francis Daley and Jonathan Goldstein. They've been kind of prolific in the comedy game this past decade or so. Did you ever see Game Night?
No, but I heard about it.
Game Night is really funny. It's one of the best comedies I've seen within the past decade or so. So that's definitely up there. They also did Horrible Bosses, It's another great one.
Nice.
And then they did that Vacation remake that I liked, but had some interesting reactions to it. But overall, I love their writing style, and I just like how they bring things together on the screen.
Yeah, everything does come together. Everything's
But definitely watch Game Night. That's the number one recommendation I would give if you like this movie, just because of the writing.
Honestly, I'll allow it because it ties into everything.
It's a game. They're both games. It's perfect.
Yeah, that is very true. So my number one thing that I would recommend people who are, interested in watching something else very Dungeons and Dragons related is The Legend of Vox Machina, which is an animated show that is on Amazon Video. I think it's called Amazon Prime Video, or I think it's Amazon Video now. They keep changing the name, but or is it Prime Video? I think it's Prime Video now. So anyway, the show, again, is called The Legend of Vox Machina, animated show created by the creative mind of Critical Role, which is a Dungeons and Dragons YouTube channel, and stars a lot of familiar faces. We have Laura Bailey. You may have recognized her from a lot of video game franchises such as The Last of Us, and we have Ashley Johnson, who voices one of the characters as well. She sounds like Ellie from The Last of Us, as always. It's something that she'll probably never be able to escape because that is just, the dialect of her voice, and it is amazing. But that show I usually tell people that is kind of like the Guardians of the Galaxy animated fantasy show, but there's so much heart and the story is so good, Devin. They just released the second season, and I cannot recommend it enough to anyone out there who is looking for a fantasy show to get into. The episodes are only around like 22 to 24 minutes. And you can blow through them, and it tells a very compelling story. The CGI, the animation, the aesthetics, everything looks so good, and I can't recommend it enough. So yeah, The Legend of Vox Machina. That's something else that you are looking for, fantasy/adventure related to, continue your crave after seeing Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. That is something that you can definitely check out. So with all that said, let's move into our final thoughts and our ratings here for this film. I'll pass it back over to Devin. So Devin, what are your final thoughts and ratings for this movie?
Final thoughts. It's just a fun time overall. Plenty of laughs, which definitely, like I mentioned before, is great for the newcomers like myself. Kind of get you eased into the world, and they can definitely build something out of this as well. You can obviously go to a sequel. You can go to spin-offs, like whatever you want. Who is this? Was this Paramount that made this one? I think I remember seeing that.
I don't remember seeing that either. It's either Paramount or Universal. I'm trying to find.
Yeah, it's Paramount. I see the little mountain logo at the bottom right of the poster.
Yeah. You're right. I got you.
So yeah, they can kind of build out their own little world here. They got a great start with these characters. They can make a sequel. They can make spin-offs if they want. Obviously, Regé-Jean Page's character was great. I wouldn't mind seeing a spin-off of him. You can get Simon, his own little wizard spinoff. There's just a lot you can go on from here, and they did a good job of building that world to where it would be exciting to see more of it, which is ultimately what all these big corporations are trying to attempt. Some succeed while others do not. Hopefully this one can be a nice budding property for them, because Dungeons & Dragons is huge, and they can expand in never-ending ways, I would say.
Yeah.
Not really too many issues with this one. There's a couple of MacGuffins where it's just like, it's a little too MacGuffin-y. Like, okay, it's a magic helmet and then a magic other thing, and then this other thing helps them, and it's some of it's
D&D.
too convenient, but overall, just a really good time. I'd probably give it a score of like 80 overall, like really solid, not too many issues. Didn't feel like 2 hours and 14 minutes at all, really, which is good. Did not drag on.
I definitely agree with you there as well. So sorry, go ahead and give your score.
Yeah, give it like an 80 overall. Really solid.
Ooh, okay. So yeah, I would actually also give this an 80. all together. I thought it was fantastic. Easily one of my favorite movies of the year. Pretty much echo everything that Devin had said when it just comes to, since this is Paramount makes some really good stuff, and I can definitely see them not necessarily even making a sequel, but like they can make another Dungeons and Dragons movie with like an entirely different cast of characters, because that's.
Yeah, they can have like an evolving door of just different, whoever wants to play in the franchise can just hop on.
Right. And like in every single movie can be like a small campaign of itself.
Because I know Michelle Rodriguez is actually a big fan of D&D in real life. So that's probably why she signed on for this one. So if they can find other people like that, that'd be cool.
I do. There are a lot of celebrities out there that play Dungeons and Dragons. Like it shocked me there for a while a few years back.
What if they got the whole Stranger Things crew to do a movie, but not as their characters, but as new characters for Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, they could. I mean, depending on the campaign, like you can have a 2-parter where it's like, okay, this is going to be the campaign of this story, and we're going to make this movie into 2 parts, yada yada yada. But
I want to see Vecna.
the real Vecna, the D&D Vecna with Demogorgons and the Mind Flayer and whatnot. But no, that would actually be really, really awesome. Like I would love that 100%. And yeah, they could definitely keep this going, but you don't want it to feel too tiresome. So, one every like couple of years or something would be pretty cool. And, you can just have a bunch of random D&D campaigns, with different stories, and just change it up every single time. It doesn't have to be a continuation, which is something I think that Paramount has probably struck gold with. I believe they also had Paramount also had this movie that just hit Blu-ray, or a 4K Blu-ray for the first time. I think it's called Dragon Slayer. Yeah, it's called Dragon Slayer. And I was looking into it all together, and I'm not sure if this is like Dungeons and Dragons all together, but it looks like it is just it's a movie from like the 80s. A king has made a pact with a dragon where he sacrifices virgins to it, and the dragon leaves his kingdom alone. An old wizard and his keen young apprentice volunteer to kill the dragon and attempt to save the next virgin in line, the king's own daughter. Wow, that's crazy. So yeah, that's something you could definitely check out. You know who's in this? No, that's not him. I'm sorry. I thought that was somebody else. I misspoke. But yeah, I definitely want to check that out as well. But that is also through Paramount. So it looks pretty cool. It definitely looks like an old 80s movie. I guess it is somewhat of a cult classic. But yeah, Paramount makes some really great stuff altogether. So I'm going to stop yammering here for all of our D&D talk. And that is a wrap on this section of our show. If you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Film Optics. Again, that is optics with an X to stay in the know. And make sure to always share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optics podcast with a movie lover in need. And really quick, what is coming out now, since Devin will be departing from after this section of the podcast, we have our Super Mario Brothers movie review coming up, as well as our Air review and Evil Dead Rises. So I got to get on the Evil Dead train and watch these movies so I can, be caught up with everybody else, because I still haven't seen it. But also, you can listen to our John Wick Chapter 4 review and our Shazam Fury of the Gods review, as well as our Scream 6 spoiler-free review for all of you guys who are looking for something new to dive into. So with all of that said, and without further delay, we're going to jump into our home entertainment Blu-ray review section, starting with Women Talking. So we'll be right back after this introduction to our Women Talking Blu-ray review.
It was all waiting to happen before it happened. You could look back and follow the breadcrumbs along the path that led to violence. When we looked back, it had been everywhere.
It is a part of our faith to forgive. We would be forced to leave the colonies if we do not forgive these men.
None of you will listen to reason.
We know that we've not imagined these attacks. We know that we are bruised and terrified.
Hope for the unknown is good. It is better than hatred of the familiar. We cannot endure any more violence.
We have been preyed upon like animals. Maybe we should respond like animals.
How would you feel if in your entire life it never mattered what you thought? When we've liberated ourselves, we will have to ask ourselves who we are.
And we are back with our home entertainment section of today's show. As I mentioned before, I will be covering 2 movies for Blu-ray release. The first up is, of course, Women Talking, followed by Batman: The Doom That Came to Gotham. And I'd also like to thank both Universal Pictures and Warner Brothers Pictures for sending me these products to review. So without further delay, let's dive in. Up first, we have Women Talking, which is directed and written by Sarah Polley, and also a writing credit is Miriam Toews, who wrote Women Talking, the book. So this is a film adaptation of Miriam Toews' work and stars Rooney Mara, Claire Foy, Jessie Buckley, Judith Ivey, Frances McDormand, and Ben Whishaw. And this Blu-ray is going to run you around $22.95 according to Amazon and Best Buy. And the best part about this Blu-ray is that it's already out on release. It released on March 7th. So this is a bit of a delay review for me. I've been busy moving. A lot of life events have been happening, so I do apologize if this is a tad late, but this is a movie that I thoroughly enjoy, and I just had to talk about it all together. So if you are new to this portion of our podcast, I usually give my initial reactions first, then I talk about the picture quality, then the audio quality, special features, and then I go into my final thoughts on whether or not this is a Blu-ray that you should add to your collection. So as far as my initial reactions, I saw this a few months ago, way before the award season started, before it won for Best Adapted Screenplay during the Oscars, and before this movie was nominated for Best Picture for the Oscars. I'm a major admirer of Sarah Polley's work, especially her documentary hybrid film, Tales We Tell. I was not able to watch it in the theaters, but after watching that and hearing that this movie was coming out, I had a lot of high hopes for Women Talking. And I'm pleased to announce that those, my expectations were met altogether. I think this movie skillfully refreshes the 12 Angry Men style cliche by increasing the stakes and invoking social criticism every bit as well as the original film. But as far as the picture goes for this movie, this is not a happy-go-lucky film. This is a very dark and melancholy film. So the colors are going to be muted by design, which they are on the Blu-ray disc. And there is a nice saturation of them, with some of the blues and greens managing to pop out here and there. But overall, this movie is meant to almost carry a colorless world, which reflects the trials and tribulations that these women are going through. And the film actually has a larger aspect ratio here, which I think works very nice for this transfer. And there are a lot of muted grays within this film as well. But at the same time, it looks very fantastic because it nails such a distinct visual choice, again, for the tribulations and trials that these women are going through. I do believe that the picture quality is sharp and very clean. And I feel as if this Blu-ray is pushing the boundaries for what a standard Blu-ray disc can do. Unfortunately, there is not a 4K copy of this movie, so we are kind of stuck with the Blu-ray copy. I would love to see a 4K copy come one day, but I feel as this not being a 4K disc, I think this is about as far as you can take a Blu-ray disc, and the quality definitely shows. Now, as far as the audio, I felt like the audio was very crisp and clean. There are a few quiet dialogue scenes because this is a very heavy dialogue movie altogether. But when it comes to the singing and the music and all of the effects are very, very well balanced, and it gives the picture a genuine feel. This, like I said, this is a heavy dialogue film. So it's very important for the audio to capture every snark, every snarky remark, every quick comeback when it comes to a movie like this, because it mainly just all takes place in a barn. And obviously the audio is just as important as the picture quality, but here I feel like it really needs to hit home, and it definitely gives you that sense of ambiance. It really transports you back into 2010, which is, for these women, they've been living out of time for for a long portion of their life. But as far as the special features go, unfortunately, this is the quickest part of this review. There are none. There are no bonus features in this release, which I feel like is such a bummer because this is Sarah Polley's comeback, and she won Best Adapted Screenplay during the 95th Oscars this year. And I felt like this Blu-ray package should have had a little bit more due diligence. This is someone coming back who Hollywood once beloved. A lot of my friends were big Sarah Polley fans, and I feel like we could have had a few special features. I always enjoy watching how these passion projects come together and everyone involved. And it kind of sucks that there isn't there is no special features whatsoever here. But you had to take what you can get. But I really wish and hope that Universal releases a 4K copy at some point this year, maybe around Christmas time. I don't know. We'll see. But as far as my final thoughts go for this movie, it is an engaging drama that deserves all of the Academy nominations and wins that was bestowed upon it. With the picture quality, as I mentioned before, it is relatively impressive for a standard Blu-ray image. And like I said, the only big downside here is that there are no special features. Unfortunately, we do see that with a lot of Blu-rays coming out, but luckily there are a few titles out there, different studios that, still give you that extra bit of meat with your potatoes altogether. But, it kind of just sucks because it's terrible that there's no extras, because since Sarah Polley, it would have been amazing if she had some type of contribution to the special features. That is the biggest drawback for me for right now. But sadly, it is what it is. You just have to obtain the normal Blu-ray if you're interested. I believe if you are a fan of Sarah Polley, or if you're a fan of Claire Foy or Jessie Buckley or Judith Ivey, I think you should pick this up. This is a cool, easy $22 altogether. You get what you pay for, unfortunately. But if you're a fan of any of these amazing actors on this film, then I think it is something worth looking into altogether. And I definitely think you should add it to your collection if you are a fan of Sarah Polley's work. If not, you can always wait for a sale. But again, I don't really see this movie going to maybe around the $15 mark, maybe around the holiday season. Since it did drop on March 7th, I guess there is room for the price to drop, excuse me. but honestly, for $22.95, I feel like that's a fair shake, especially with a movie that with only an hour and 44 minutes of runtime. But with all that said, that concludes this section of our Women Talking Home Entertainment Blu-ray review. So we'll be right back to wrap up our triple feature of this entire episode. We're going to wrap up with Batman, the Doom That Came to Gotham. So we'll be right back right after this introduction to the movie.
Doom. The great doom is coming.
The sins of the Father are heaped upon the Son.
You have no clue the power this book possesses.
I know those who seek it mean to do this city harm.
Before it can be truly saved, Gotham must be burned to the ground.
For those who do not know about this story, Batman, the Doom That Came to Gotham is inspired by a comic book series that is based in the 1920s that finds Bruce Wayne accidentally unleashing an ancient evil, expediting his return to Gotham City after a 2-decade hiatus. So I'm going to get straight into my initial reactions here first, let you guys know what I thought about this movie, because I've never read the comics before for this story. So if you have, this might be something worth checking out, when it comes to the adaptation of animated films. They do take a little bit of adaptations, changes here and there, but hopefully for those who are interested in picking this up, it is, by the book, straight for the source material. But as far as my initial reactions go, as I've mentioned in our previous DC animated review, I am a major fan of animated films, particularly ones that are based on comic books or anything fantasy related, honestly. I've always admired the DC storyline in the animated films. And as I mentioned before, I'm not familiar with the source material or the original source material surrounding Batman, the Doom That Came to Gotham, but I do believe that this is DC's darkest animated film that we've seen in a while, since Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. But this film shares a similar setting with Batman Gotham by Gaslight, which is another animated movie in the DC universe that was also a period piece of Batman during the Victorian era, which I thought was pretty cool. I enjoyed how The Doom That Came to Gotham was based on a horror movie, or based around the horror genre, I should say, which includes, monsters and otherworldly entities, as well as a slew of Batman's rogues gallery, including Oliver Queen, Jason Blood, Harvey Dent, Poison Ivy, and Mr. Freeze, amongst others, which is really cool to see how they were able to squeeze so many Batman villains in this movie. But it's not too often that we see Batman take on the supernatural, let alone in a horror setting. So I thought that was all pretty cool. Overall, I did enjoy myself while watching the movie. As far as the picture goes, as I've mentioned before, and again, other DC animated movies that we've covered here on the channel, those well-versed with the DC animated franchise will recognize that the 4K version of the picture quality is the best option, even though there isn't a lot of difference between the 4K and the standard Blu-ray. It's not a huge, significant leaps and bounds, I would say. The 4K version is more of like a touch-up. If you're watching it side by side with the Blu-ray version, you get the deeper blacks and whatnot. But although it may not provide a night and day enhancement over the Blu-ray equivalent, both of these discs, when it comes to the 4K and the standard Blu-ray disc, are, high quality displays. The art style is different from what we've seen in current DC animated films. The more recent stories have this Archer art style with the classic bold lines from movies like Batman The Long Halloween or Superman Man of Tomorrow. And it seems that this film in particular, The Doom That Came to Gotham, is kind of reverted back to the thin line standard aesthetic that we've seen in previous DC animated films. As far as the color scheme in this picture, it is significantly darker in this movie, sharing a similar color palette with Batman The Long Halloween, but the HDR of this movie really amplifies the tones and the colors along with the fluorescent greens, the purples, and other worldly effects. The 4K HDR image does have a denser and richer black levels altogether. And with the white levels in intense explosions or fiery explosion action sequences, those appear more balanced on the standard Blu-ray. As far as the audio, as always, when it comes to DC animated films, I have no problem with them whatsoever. I encountered no problems with the audio from what I've noticed for the dialogue of this film. I believe that the dialogue actually takes center stage with Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham. It's a very long title, by the way. Anyway, the surrounding noises are heard clearly and often throughout my surround speakers. I have a subwoofer with a Samsung soundbar and everything comes through crystal clear. The low end of the bass is prominent and the sound of the effects of explosions and gunshots and whatnot. But everything really comes together with the audio, notably when it comes to the supernatural sequences, the explosions, the vehicles, the drive-by shots, and of course, the music score altogether. It really just comes together beautifully. But, you know, the Discord for the audio is very concise. It's very straightforward, very simple to understand. And this is a solid audio track all around. I believe this comes with DTS sounds altogether, so you're definitely going to get a lot of bang for your buck, as well as Dolby. So you should be able to switch back and forth if your TV surround sound supports both Dolby and DTS altogether. But yeah, I think this is very consistent when it comes to the audio for the rest of the DC animated universe films. But as far as the special features go, this is where things start to teeter off a bit when it comes to the packaging altogether. You know, I was very excited to get into this movie when it appeared on my doorstep. You know, I love looking at the special features when it comes to movies in general to see how much they offer, because I feel like that is a big incentive of buying physical media, is that you get those extra goodies when it comes to like featurettes or, you know, commentaries and whatnot. Unfortunately, when it comes to Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham, the special features are a bit lackluster. There are two notable special features. The first one is a audio commentary. The first special feature that is notable is the audio commentary. This is the commentary of Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham by the filmmakers, the storytellers, the producers, etc., and the screenwriters all together. And then there is a Batman Shadows of Gotham featurette, which is kind of cool. That's one thing that I really enjoyed with this, is watching that little featurette, to see the entire cast and crew come together and talk about this project, how it came to be, and their passion for making this movie. Because at the end of the day, making movies is hard, man. It's crazy. But unfortunately, that is where the special features end for Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham altogether. Like I said, it is a bit lackluster, but usually when it comes to the DC animated films, that's just something that happens. You know, it depends really on the story altogether. And, you know, we also covered Legion of Superheroes a few weeks back, which is another DC animated movie. And I feel like that's similar to Batman, The Doom That Came to Gotham altogether when it comes to these special features. So that is two DC animated movies so far. We haven't gotten a lot of crazy special features. But then again, these movies are only around an hour, 30 minutes long. You can watch them, you know, during an afternoon where you got nothing else going on. But sometimes I do wish that there were better or beefier special features when it comes to these discs. But it is time for me to get into my final thoughts here for this movie. When it comes to this movie overall, I did enjoy the story. I enjoyed the horror elements that were surrounding this movie. You know, I don't want to give anything away, but it definitely deals with a lot of Batman's trauma. And, you know, this being set in the 1920s really changes a lot of things for Batman himself. I kind of view this as like an Elseworld or otherworldly story within the Batman universe. But I thought overall, I really did enjoy myself with this movie. I thought it was very dark, very gritty, as Batman movies usually are. But there was something about this one that really just, you know, made me go, oh my gosh, this is super crazy. And, you know, they're able to pack all this action and amazing story within an hour and 30 minutes. But as far as my final thoughts go to whether you should buy this or not, I would say if you are a hardcore DC animated movie fan, that, you know, has to have like the latest and greatest every single time they pump out one of these bad boys, definitely buy it. You know, you might be able to save yourself a few bucks when it comes to the Blu-ray. Like I said, you know, the 4K is more of a nice little bit of a touch up, but I can't say you're necessarily missing a lot when it comes to the 4K disc. And of course, the special features are a bit lacking, but I would also recommend anyone to pick this up if they are a fan of the original source material when it comes to the Doom that came to Gotham. You know, you kind of get to see how the story is adapted for a different medium. But overall, I think whether you're a Batman fan in general or if you're a fan of the comic book itself, definitely, you know, if you're just looking to expand your library when it comes to, you know, Blu-rays and whatnot, I would probably wait a little bit for a sale if you want to get the 4K, or probably just cheap out a little bit and get the Blu-ray altogether. But overall, I had a great time. And yeah, if you are interested in this, I think you should go ahead and buy it because I had a great time altogether. But with all that said, that is a wrap on today's episode. If you like what you heard on today's episode, please subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform of choice, and make sure to share an episode of our podcast with a friend, whether it be your mother, your brother, or your significant other. Make sure to share an episode of the Film Optics podcast with a movie lover in need. And with all that said, thank you so much for listening to our show. And if you enjoy the show, leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram to stay in the know. I'm your host, Christian, and that was Devin, and we'll see you guys in the next one.